I mean, for the rules, there can only be one faction winner, so messing with the other factions is very much incentivized. Yeah, it is. And I'm really pleased it's happening, because like I said in the previous games, nobody really sent volunteers. I'm so happy that's changed. So Trab al Biden has been defeated, so that's one of the 3 Berber factions, so that is going to be some more territory, but they're going to be fighting against Wadai and the Tuaregs, both of whom are going to have reinforcements, but that does mean that the... Wait, is Tuareg being cut in half? No, they didn't have lands up there in the north. So they're still very much going to be embattled down here in the south. It doesn't look like these Swedish troops can move into the Tuareg territories, probably because the Tuaregs are not allied to Wadai. But yeah, this is significantly messing with them. I hadn't expected player volunteers to the Berber uprising. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Are there human players in Africa? Only National France. So, how's the Indochina War going? It is not going too hot for Germany East Asia. And they are doing a ton of damage to Germany East Asia. I mean, Germany East Asia hasn't lost that much manpower, which is a bit of a surprise. Okay, we're letting hot joints come in. Okay, we're back in. Just going to double check I'm on baton. I am. Game is unpaused. Seems to be fine. Alright, so let's go and take a look over in Africa again. So the Tuaregs are currently being attacked by the French. The French forces should be fairly significantly stronger, especially when they are supported by the Canadians. Although I am not seeing Canadian troops.
Mordred.
Hello.
So we confirmed a way to fix the observer bug. So like on the racing screen, just consult the animation, and
yeah.
Then you will get rid of the bug.
Yeah, I tried to type that in chat to remind you, but you can't type in chat as an observer.
I got it.
Cool. Thanks. Alright, so that was just the admin saying, hey, this is how you fix the bug, but we know already. It does look like the French... Oh, no, why are you going that way? You could take Niamey and then cut them out completely. Although I guess this is making that entrance a little bit more secure, but you just need to be hoping that Sweden doesn't wake up to the danger and react. The Cairo Congress, leaders of many countries within the Middle East, from Iran to Arabia to Cyrenaica, have gathered in Cairo to discuss the Ottoman issue. Meanwhile, over here in Indonesia, not Indonesia, Indochina, it does look like Indochina's got a lot of troops. They're, I think, purposefully not taking Hanoi. Oh no, he's moving. That war's got to be over soon, surely. There's actually a lot of wars going on. Alright, Hanoi has fallen again. Kamil Khanate, East Turkestan, Xinjiang, Clique have been annexed. I never even had a chance to look at that, but never mind. Germany East Asia is now halfway to capitulation. What major victory points are still here? Just Lang Son. I'm surprised they have to take as much as they do. And it looks like they're leaving a lot more troops behind to deal with the naval invasions. Which I guess does make sense. Also, Germany East Asia are now completely tapped for manpower. Unsurprisingly, because they keep on whittling troops away there. So Germany East Asia is going to be mostly just an industrial hub, so they're going to be sending a lot of Lend-Lease rather than their super Prussian Space Marine craziness. Helmet guy having issues again. It's been helmet guy a few times now. Germany does get an event to join if the war goes on long enough. Haha. When Germany gets the event, the war option is a land war in Asia. Tally-ho! Interesting. Have I seen the wonderful graphics they've added of cities in Kaiserreich? Yeah, I'd heard of that. Haven't actually spent much time checking it out, but basically, if you take a look at, say, Berlin, then... Come on, let me click on Berlin. There we go. The graphics here change. So that's Berlin, that's Paris, that's London, and loads of different places have this. So if we go over to Washington, probably New York, quite a few. Moscow, Madrid. Loads of different graphics for the different capitals and major cities around the world. So they did manage to get around, but I think they were kind of caught snoozing a little bit, going after Niamey. Although they are attacking it at the moment, so they should be able to push through. And they've secured the entire access, so they're not going to get cut off by the Swedes, who are trying. And there is a unit of motorised here. And I'm sure that they would have preferred having these two switched around, so the motorised were at the cutting edge. Meanwhile, through the south, I mean, France just has a lot more troops than the Berbers and the Swedes do in this area. And it is now Sweden and Ukraine that's supporting. And then over on this side, it's just Sweden. If they had more volunteers, they could make it an absolute pain to punch through this. I mean, it's a one province minor access point. Because of the wasteland here and because of the lake here. Like, if Sweden and, like, Ukraine just parked themselves in this province, it'd be pretty much impossible to push to Abrashe. Abrashi, however you pronounce it. Meanwhile, Guangxi, any supporters? Yes! Australasia and India have sent supporters to the Guangdong clique, whereas the... what are they called? Guangxi military do have Ukraine, Russia, and it's now the Russian state, Germany and Austria supporting. So it's the Entente versus Reichspakt and Co-Prosperity Sphere here. So is Guangdong one of the few Entente potentials? Because Guangdong is the one that can form the Republican United Front, so I guess they can join the Entente, or at least they're probably the most hostile to the other factions in China. Because that's like nationalist China. That's trying to form a unified China that's outside of faction politics, I guess. I don't know. I'm completely making that bit up. KT coming in with a 24-month. That is the 2-year resubscription there, KT. Thank you so much for the ongoing support. Enjoy the orange wings. Of course, far superior to golden wings because the Dutch have all of the gold. So they don't need golden wings. They can show their superiority through the orange ones. Time to sit down and watch some Mordred Viking and make a dent in my 6.7 kilogram bag of gummy bears. That's a lot of gummy bears, and I'm very jealous. Am I winning? I'm not playing, I'm commentating. So yes, I'm always winning. Niamey is now being fortified by the Ukrainians. We do have a couple of the Tyrax coming back again. Sweden is in real danger of a cut-off here. If these French come and take these two, then those Swedes are dead. Ukraine doing a valiant job trying to hold out there, but if these French keep moving, and they are, they need to react to this, and I think they're being caught snoozing. That's not going to end well for them. Yes, the Federalists are one of the very few pro-Entente options in China. Well, there you go. Okay, so Sweden has moved back. They've actually guarded this. They should be able to hold while these guys are defeated, which will pull them back and actually allow the cavalry to recover as well. So the Reichspakt faction's doing a pretty good job holding the Entente back there and basically delaying France's recovery. Meanwhile, Indochina is kicking ass and taking names. That is a lot of German East Asia units caught out here. And obviously Indochina knows what's doing the damage to German East Asia because they just don't have the manpower for this. They absolutely do not have the manpower for this many losses. No standing manpower, 100,000 in the field, and they don't really have the potential to regain any more. Because of that colonial question, total effective manpower modified to 13%. So even if they do raise their manpower limits, they can't ever get more back because the manpower factor is so bad for them. It's kind of like the Indian famine. Like, you're just never going to get manpower out of Germany East Asia. It's going to be purely industrial. I mean, admittedly, Singapore can house quite a lot of industry. It's a big province, and they have a lot of industrial power because of the strength of the League of Five Provinces. But they could also really do with the huge amount of really high-level forces. The other thing which I should mention about Germany East Asia is they have a really interesting ability. Max volunteer force. Oh, it's only +3 now. That used to be +11, which was ever so slightly overpowered. They could send like an entire army of special forces. They can't anymore, unless there's a focus which allows them to send more. Right, KMT Guangxi, I don't know if they can link to the big war if they're just supporting them to stop helping the Federalists. Probably stopping the Federalists. And I'm absolutely loving all of the volunteers moving around like this. This is what I expect of Kaiserreich. All of the machinations and the interventions, and like this is setting the stage for the Second World War. And I think that this is actually one of the things that Kaiserreich absolutely nails, is the Second World War itself is always different because of the dynamicism introduced by all the civil wars and the wrangling for position before the Second World War happens. Like, if there was going to be a decent Cold War mod, this is how you would handle the Cold War. You would just have lots of volunteers and lots of interventions in various conflicts around the world to kind of solidify the different sides and the different spheres of influence. And that's very much how I see this. This is the Cold War before the war turns hot, and that hot war, of course, is the Second World War. Legendary Space Marines of the GEA. I want to see someone making 40 with medium tanks as GEA, just shipping them to Europe to destroy France. That is exactly how you do it, because... Oh, for Pete's sake. I did everything right. I selected another country. Hello.
How are you?
I'm alright, I just crashed.
Everyone crashed.
Okay, it wasn't just me.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts on the glorious international, upset in Queen?
You got really unlucky. Basically,
How so?
You got outmaneuvered. When you took Anqing out, then all of your units were caught there in the north, allowing Nanjing to cut you off and then win that civil war.
Oh, we didn't want to win.
Oh, really?
No, not at all. We want a very strong Qing, and we've essentially worked it out that there'll be in between 30 to 80,000 guns be dropped on Qing and just be like, now it's going to be a meat grinder. Deal with that for 3 years.
See, what I thought your intention there was to get the Left Komandang to win, and then you would have a Third International power in China.
Where we game will be up soon.
Yeah,
that would be.
I think everyone
a smart
crashed
idea.
there. Hang on.
Yeah.
I think everyone crashed there, 1-2.
Where are we hosting now?
Okay,
Game will
cool.
be up soon.
Yeah.
And we just had another out of sync, because of course we did. So I think they're just letting things roll in for a moment. Oh, American Civil War. We're going to go and take a look at that. See how that exactly shapes up. I'm just going to make sure that I have everything up and running. That's working. Notification should come up. And also, I'm hoping that we're out of the advert. We are. Good. So apparently I just came back in. So, yay, timing. There goes the GA. Did the GA also die? Not yet. They're still going. So, American Civil War. What are the sides and who is helping what? So, the United States is being lend-leased military access from Australasia, Canada, France, and India. They're getting military access to Canada, which may allow them to do some other shenanigans. It doesn't look like they're losing New England yet. And how's their units looking? So they're being fairly aggressive against Philadelphia, which makes sense. And if they could secure Philadelphia and New York, that is a huge deal, because then the Third International will not be able to lend lease equipment to the CSA. If they keep New York, and if they keep the dockyard in New York, more importantly, then CSA can get equipment. Blockading the AUS is rather more difficult. I mean, you do have a navy, you can use it, and the AUS doesn't have much of a fleet. The PSA is really the dangerous one in terms of shipping. But it's very difficult to block reinforcements and lend-leases to the AUS, but to the CSA you can do it. And I think that they are making the right choice, being much more aggressive against the CSA, because they are the bigger threat. They have more manpower, they have more industry, and you're able to be in a position to deal with the AUS afterwards. Then the PSA just has to cross a lot of territory to really become an issue. Yeah, once they have the entirety of the Rockies, they are very difficult to push back again, but you can do it. The question here is, who is going to be supporting each faction? I am seeing a disappointing amount of stuff. Now, it was pointed out earlier that you can see if volunteers are on the way. As yet, I'm not seeing any volunteers. That was Guangdong just losing. We'll go and take a look at that in a minute. Then down here in the AUS, also no support. So America's not getting anything. Absolutely nothing in America. Meanwhile, here in Indonesia, it does look like the last vestiges of the GEA are being destroyed. Indochina absolutely milking everything that they can out of the Germany stages. Germany stage is just going to have nothing left. And this is going to make going after their remaining territories much easier, because they've only got one division. One solitary division. So what might happen here is GEA might go straight after Germany stage. I don't know if they can, because there's probably... Is there a truce? Is there a such thing as truces in this? I'm not sure there is. Besides, it's still a German vassal. But the amount of damage they've done here is phenomenal. Okay, Argentina against the Patagonia. Also, Tower Confederation has just been defeated. So that was definitely something which was coming soon. Have I ever done the USA as MacArthur? I know you've done the other ones. Yes, I have. Alright, so this is the Patagonian Workers' Front, which I know that the Internationale wanted to invest in very, very heavily. At the moment, nothing is being sent. They are an autonomous puppet of Chile. Is Chile getting any volunteers? Nothing sent as yet. That's still GEA. Just trying to see if there are any volunteers on the way. Not yet that I'm seeing. Let's go back to the USA, see if they're receiving any... Nothing. Absolutely no, nothing happening. Okay, so the CSA has volunteers from the Commune of France and the Union of Britain. They have military access to Mexico. And Italy has sent an attaché, but no equipment and no troops. United States we've already seen. AUS is getting reserves or volunteers from Germany, Sweden, and the Ukraine. So it's just the USA. The Entente not doing anything to assist the USA at present. And then the Pacific States is getting volunteers from the Co-Prosperity Sphere. So it's very much Co-Pros, Entente, Internationale, Reichspakt. So the four factions in the USA are being represented. Obviously the United States of America has the player, so they're going to get the it's being played by a player bonus. But then again, I would also argue the United States of America is the weakest faction in the American Civil War, so they're going to be up against it. It doesn't look like... nope, they are still on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, so they're not managing to secure Pittsburgh early on. And also, New England looks like it's being carved up and taken by the CSA. So this is going to be a strong CSA with a large industrial base, access to Lend-Lease because they still control the port in New York. This could be very dangerous for the USA. Also, the cutoff has already happened, so all of this is going to be separate from this. With the supply issues of not having your capital in a... no supply can flow from the capital, so any units that the United States has out here are dead. Very wisely, they have no units out here, so this is the advantage having a player can have. You can move all of your troops into the Washington pocket and defend here, and then start to push out once you start getting reinforcements and equipment. Entente can't send volunteers to the USA because they're at war. That is true, which is the benefit of holding on to Wadai. So, is it Wadai getting volunteers? The Wadai cavalry does seem to have pushed out. Sweden is perfectly content just sitting back here in the plains. No real advantage to pushing out, I don't think, except for the fact it's just going to take longer. I do think that Wadai, if Sweden and, like, Austria sent volunteers to Wadai, they could basically make this war last forever. Yeah, France is coming in with 14 divisions, but those 14 divisions are taking 10% attrition. France can't afford this. France absolutely cannot afford this. They have a very similar problem to the German East Asia. Their units can get very strong, but they're always going to be embattled for manpower. And then if you had a Swedish unit and a Ukrainian unit, for example, Swedish units looks like they're in danger of falling. Ukraine comes in, Sweden pulls back, they regain organization, and you can keep that on pretty much indefinitely, particularly when you have those stronger units. So I think it would be very much in Reichspakt favor to keep this up, or possibly even Third International if they want to mess with the Entente. And from the sounds of things, people really do want to mess with the Entente. Meanwhile, CSA is being pressured by the Americans, the USA. Dutch elections, they've gone to the far right. Interesting. So we're going to see a national populist Netherlands, possibly. That doesn't happen very often. Or social conservative. Oh, okay. Social conservative, that's more reasonable. Meanwhile, here, absolutely just demolishing these last two units. But they're having to throw a lot of men at the problem. And how is their own manpower situation? They still have 130,000. They don't have the same recruitment restrictions that German East Asia has. They are defending this whole coastline because they have seen how much German East Asia absolutely loves the naval invasions. Hilariously, if they let this guy land and then destroyed him once he'd landed, that's their last division. German East Asia would have no divisions left if they did that. This has actually been an incredibly good war by Indochina. It has to be said. Indochina has fought this clinically and has basically knocked German East Asia out as a viable military force. They'll still have the industry, as we talked about, but militarily, irrelevant. Meanwhile, USA has actually managed to cut off the CSA, which is a big deal, because I think if there isn't a direct route to the capital, you can't send Lend-Lease. I think that's how it works. Not 100% sure about that. But the volunteers have arrived, so we've got Switzerland, we've got Italy, we've got Communist France, and we've got the Union of Britain, all fighting for the CSA. Meanwhile, down in the American Union state, we have got Sweden, Ukraine, and Germany. Both Sweden and Ukraine proving to be pretty good at sending volunteers. Germany's been a little bit more reluctant, which I think is a mistake for them, because Germany definitely has the capability to replace those units, and also they're going to want the army experience so that they can actually create new templates. Meanwhile, USA is being supported by Peru, Bolivia, and they are now starting to get Lend-Lease from Australasia, who are sending 60% of their production, and also by Canada, who is sending a set number of fighters, set number of infantry equipment, and more fighters. Alright, so they are Lend-Leasing the United States pretty heavily. And I think that's probably a wise choice. It looks like... I'm actually going to call this... I'm going to say American Union State's going to come out on top. Because nobody's really focusing on them. American Union State is going to benefit for the most, possibly except for the Pacific states, out of all the territory out here. And there's a lot of resources, and also a lot of manpower out here. CSA is being hit pretty hard by the United States, and I think if the United States can wrap this up and take this territory, they're going to be in a pretty good position. Because they'll have the industry, and they'll have the manpower, and they'll have the resources from the CSA, which we know CSA is very often a very strong faction. And then the PSA, currently fighting against AI only. They do have some volunteers. They're not currently getting any Lend-Lease. And the PSA really struggles in long-term attritional wars, which I think is going to be a big problem against players in players and volunteers against the other American factions. So my money right now is on the AUS. USA is doing a good job up here, but if the CSA can delay them, then the AUS is going to be the victor because of that. But I'll be very interested to see if they can turn that around. Meanwhile, Estonia is getting reinforcements from Russia. So is Latvia. Duchy of the Baltics, though. United Baltic Duchy, not getting any support at all from the others. If Russia can do enough to take these, then maybe we'll see the United Baltic Duchies falling. But it's actually really difficult as Germany to do anything about this, because you can't send volunteers, you can't send Lend-Lease, you can't intervene. And that becomes a real problem. Meanwhile, in Wadai, it looks like they are being pushed back. I think it's a mistake that they are not sent more volunteers. I really think that they should have sent more than just Sweden, because they are forcing France to send 14 divisions. 14! To attack that. I can't click on the template, so I can't see what those are actually comprising of, but they're taking a lot of attrition from this. Their manpower's gone down by, what, 60,000 since we last checked? That's a lot. That's an awful lot. So Wadai is doing the job here. And, yeah, if these guys had some more reinforcements than just Sweden, I think that would have made a difference. Meanwhile, over here, the cutoff has well and truly occurred. The division of the United States is happening. American Union State is moving in aggressively. CSA is moving in with far too many troops. I think the CSA should have a lot more of those units over defending against the USA. AI can't do anything about that. Then the PSA is also driving out actually pretty aggressively and starting to get a bit of a border with the AUS. It's going to be interesting to see who the Pacific States go against. Whether they decide to go against the AUS or not. Also, we are seeing a Canadian build-up here against the PSA. So we may well see the Canadians, and they're using militia units, which is interesting. Manpower heavy, industry light, which is an interesting choice for Canada, seeing as Canadian manpower ain't that useful. Or ain't that high, it's very useful, it's just not that high. Oh yeah, Dominion's at war. I had not realised that. So we've got the Dominion of India, who are not getting any support from anybody. We've got the Princely Federation, who is also not getting any support from anybody. I kind of would have expected Reichspakt to support Dominion of India. Where are my Swedes? Where are my Ukrainians? They seem so gung-ho ordinarily to support this stuff, but they're not doing it this time. If anything, the best thing to do, the best thing in volunteer sending is to get to grind your generals. If you as Germany have 5 generals who are level 6 and up, your generals can steamroll with absurdly good, especially with the industrial backing. You're not wrong. I think it's a massive mistake that Germany is being so reluctant to send volunteers. They can afford the losses. Unlike most other nations, they can afford the losses. And I think it's a really big mistake that they haven't done that. Also, Fentieng is fighting. Fentieng against Qing has begun. So we've got the Fentieng coming in with their cross-spade units. And then we have got Qing China holding firm against them. Meanwhile, we have a hot train coming in.